desirable, and they said that they stand ready to cooperate more closely to encourage this. After the Plaza Agreement, dollar depreciated very sharply. So, and then since the dollar depreciated too fast, there was a concern among the G7 countries. So, and then came the Louisville Accord in February 1987. It was in the Louisville Accord, the reduction of large trading balances is a matter of high priority. And then to reduce existing imbalances, surplus countries committed themselves to follow policies designed to strengthen domestic demand and to reduce their external surpluses. And in this context, Bank of Japan agreed to take further easing monetary policy. So this is the typical example of monetary policy coordination. And also G7 agreed that exchange rate should be stabilized. And just before the Louisville Accord, bilateral monetary policy coordination was also made as listed on the table. And this is the trend of current account of Japan. In the latter half of 1980s, current account surplus has increased rapidly. And this chart shows the trends of yen-dollar rate. After Plaza Agreement, yen appreciated sharply, which was the background of Louisville Accord. And after the Plaza Agreement and following Louisville Accord, Bank of Japan reduced official discount rate. Then from late 1989, Bank of Japan started to raise official discount rate to cope with the bubble economy. During the so-called bubble economy in the latter half of 1980s, stock prices rise very sharply. Then it declined sharply after 1990. And land prices showed a similar trend during the bubble period. Sharp decline of land prices was problematic because because lands are collateral when private banks lend money to corporations, and sharp decline in land prices caused credit crunch and also increase of non-performing loan of major banks. Oh, okay. Okay. So I should wrap up. So, okay. And this chart is a summary of what had happened during the bubble economy. And next chart shows the burst of the bubble economy. So my summary is here. In G7 finance ministers' meetings, monetary policy coordination to manage spillovers on other countries is repeatedly mentioned. However, independence of central bank and monetary policy coordination may not be compatible. And to what extent US Fed takes into account the spillover effect is questionable. And the experience of G7 shows that monetary policy coordination can work under certain conditions. However, the Japanese experience in the late 1980s ended up in unfavorable outcome. Unfavorable means that after the burst of the bubble economy, we experienced about 20 years of depression, which is called lost 2 decades. So thank you.
I must really apologize to you for cutting you short, but we don't have much time left. I thought that was a very interesting presentation, particularly because it went into the details of the actual sort of discussions within institutions and how institutions have actually taken the process off, or the idea of, or not taken it forward, the idea of monetary coordination. We will, the presentations and the discussion is over. We can sort of open the floor to questions. We have about time. It's 10 to 5, or what time do you have, Rajat?
Another 10 minutes.
We have about 10 minutes of questions. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much for excellent presentations. We often learn about Taylor rule as monetary policy. Taylor rules has inflation target, sometimes growth rate of the economy. But today's discussion, everyone said we should take into account of overall global economy into the model. Then how will you recommend Taylor rule should be changed? Because we have to take into account of other variables. And secondly, Dr. Herberto Dieter was talking about US, Japan, other countries should also raise interest rate, excluded euro, including everything. Then the coordination will become very important. How will it be possible to convince all the central banks to do the same thing? Because euro is slightly different from other countries. Thank you.
Who wants to take the Taylor rule question? Poonam, do you want to sort of comment a little on how the international impacts can be sort of incorporated in the standard Taylor rule, or do you want to comment? Okay, right. I have forgotten the formula for the Taylor rule, so I have. So, how you can, in multi-policy rules, how you can. I started to speak by 5 Okay, then you can answer this question. But I think the second question is.
Yeah, on the problem of coordination, it is true that we have very mixed experience with coordination of monetary policy. In the 1980s, initially we had Paul Volcker's kind of attempt to get rid of inflation with ultra-tight monetary policy in the United States, which led to this dramatic appreciation of the dollar that I already mentioned. And then we had Plaza and Louvre, which backfired for the Japanese, if I may say so. It didn't work out all that well for the Japanese. And when in Tokyo, there is that nice walk around the Emperor's Palace, and in 1990, the theoretical value of that piece of land in central Tokyo was equivalent to the whole real estate of California, which is always a nice reminder what too loose monetary policy can do and what bubbles, asset price inflations can do. This is a long discussion, of course. Alan Greenspan and the then chief economist of the European Central Bank, Ottmar Issing, have been discussing that about 10 years ago, whether or not central banks should consider asset price inflations or not, whether they should only look at headline inflation or whether they should also look at asset price inflation. I am, of course, following the line of Ottmar Issing. I would never suggest that the ECB would be the only central bank that does not participate in the coordination of a tightening of monetary policy. To the contrary, they should, of course, be in the front line. But consider, and this is the situation in Europe, we have for instance, the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, who is actively pushing the ECB towards a further loosening of monetary policy, because he sees that as a tool to revitalize the ailing Italian industry. So it is not all that easy for Mr. Draghi to do that. We have a problem there. We have a narrow, central banks usually have a very narrow national mandate. It is not in their rule book to consider the effects of monetary policy for the rest of the world. But then I'm asking myself, as an observer, well, if these are the limits for monetary policy makers, then why do we speak about it and why do we talk about it if they can't move? I think they should move, I think they can move, but it is not going to be an easy process.
I just wanted to quickly comment on your Taylor rule question. I'm sorry for being so facetious earlier. I think a lot of the sort of existing rules or the older rules of monetary policy and issues like the neutral rate, etc., are being revisited. And so I think we are going through a period where a lot of what was used in conventional monetary policy will have to change, and how whether specifically the Taylor rule or other ways of determining monetary policy. I think that's a big issue that you've raised. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. I think, now Poonam would.
I didn't have time to talk about the theoretical considerations about coordination. And so those theoretical considerations are that if each country follows a rule, such as the Taylor rule, and only adjusts its monetary policy according to its own inflation, then there's no need for coordination, because there's never a situation where there's too much liquidity or too little liquidity. Now the question is, during this period of ultra loose monetary policies, these Taylor rules were perhaps not followed. They broke down. So then the theoretical consideration again is there now a rule for coordination? But the point is well taken. How do you internalize it into any form of a rule of policy making, right? I mean, that is again one of those practical concerns which goes against the coordination of policy.
I'm Mitchell Call. I'm CEO Service International, and I have two questions to ask. One is the CRISIL rating, which is applicable to the bank for its performance. It is a performance-based rating. Is it applicable all over the world? And if the CRISIL rating goes beyond a limit, beyond a permissible limit, it goes beyond the limit which is not acceptable as per the banking norms, what are the remedies to be taken up by the concerned bank or by the concerned institution? Second thing which I would directly want to put to Dieter, because Deutschmark was very strong when it was working in its own currency. When it has joined the Eurozone, I feel that it is not doing well with it. I mean, didn't your financial experts did the good exercise for why did you join the Eurozone?
I think we can skip the, but I think we can skip the first question because it's strictly outside the ambit of this discussion, and we can sort of take it offline. If you want to sort of respond very quickly to this, because it's another question that has to be accommodated.
Apart from QE and the refugee crisis, of course, the future of the Eurozone is another topic that is intensely debated in Germany. And people have been asking whether it has been good to create such a monetary union with insufficient rules. That is certainly true. I am advocating that the conventional reading of the utility of the European Monetary Union for Germany is a little bit flawed. Many have been suggesting that Germany is one of the major beneficiaries of the monetary union. Then our per capita growth should have been higher than that of the average. It wasn't. Many people have been suggesting that Germany caused burden and caused problems for the other economies because of its surpluses. The very country that should think about the surpluses is Germany. A colleague from Munich has said so nicely, Germany has exported Porsches and BMWs and got Lehman derivatives and Greek government bonds in return. So that was not a very good business. And it continues to be a bit of a problem. Germany finances consumption and investment abroad. We should drive those Porsches, if you know what I mean, rather than giving them away in a raffle. Yeah? So that is an issue. It is, of course, a big discussion in Germany, which is currently not taking place because of other issues.
The last question, please.
Sir, I just wanted to know the third aspect about balanced growth. In this present globalization, if you see, we would appreciate... would globalization need a revisit? Because there have been more woes of globalization as we've seen it than solutions.
Thank you. My question really is that considering the fact that G20's objective actually is, one of the proclaimed objectives is coordination in monetary policies, and from the panel discussion it appears that obviously, my question really is, in practical terms, has the coordination been possible among the G20 countries? And if not, in that case, should they not revise the objective? Please.
appreciation of the yen. And it's a sort of barter. Japan accepts the domestic boosting policies, and instead Japan was able to get consensus on the stabilization of the exchange rate. So success of the policy coordination may need certain conditions, interests of participating countries can be combined together. Thank you.
I think before we finish, and maybe with a quick comment from Herbert, Poonam wants to respond to Herbert.
Yeah, and that combining really, on globalization, which I read as further financial integration, and I said something in my presentation on calibrating the type and magnitude of flows. So I'm just now telling something from an ongoing paper looking exactly at this issue. How do countries handle sudden stops and how do they manage their capital account policies? What is striking in the data is that countries liberalize their capital flows pro-cyclically. When there is a capital surge, they liberalize further. And when there is a capital outflow, they tend to close down. This cycle has to reverse. The cycle is already there. And it's not necessarily through taxes, it's through the pace of further liberalization. So liberalization is unidirectional, but at what pace are you liberalizing? So that pace, if it can be reversed and made more counter-cyclical, that may only serve the purpose.
Currently working on a paper together with the former chief economist of the WTO on exactly that question. We are suggesting that one should differentiate in the assessment of globalization. Globalization in trade is a different category than globalization of finance. Jagdish Bhagwati said that in 1998 in a famous paper in Foreign Affairs, there are substantially bigger risks in the liberalization of finance than there are in the liberalization of trade, and the benefits from the liberalization of unrestricted capital flows are the evidence for benefits is much weaker than in the trade of goods and services. So I think it's necessary to differentiate. It's not necessary to turn back globalization, but it is looking at positive and negative effects of certain dimensions of globalization and finance. As Ken said in 1933, quite a few things can be said in favor of a national dimension to finance.
With that, we conclude the discussion. I think it's been very interesting and enlightening to me, and hopefully for all of you. Just make some noise for the panelists. Thank you.